what we call our home. It's peaceful and beautiful, but there's so much more happening in the atmosphere that many people aren't aware of. That thing is global warming. Global warming, what is it?
Global warming is a gradual increase in the overall temperature of Earth's atmosphere, generally attributed to the greenhouse gas effect caused by increased level of carbon dioxide, chlorofluorocarbons, and other pollutants. Global warming is causing climate change that is affecting the world around us. There is a definite proof going towards the fact that the warming of the Earth is causing the climate changes. Many people believe the recent climate change is due to humans, but is it? That is what we're going to cover.
Our Earth's temperature has been slowly increasing for as long as anyone can remember. Right before the Industrial Revolution, the temperature was decreasing. Many scientists predicted that we were going to go into an ice age, but we all know that prediction was false because there has been a definite increase in temperature and some climate change. Well, there's no way to prove whether or not the ice age would have happened if the Industrial Revolution had not occurred, but there is evidence showing that the temperature has definitely spiked. By looking at the graph, you see the CO2 and temperature levels since 15,000 BC. Around 1820, there was a major increase in temperature and CO2. This also shows that there is a definite relation between temperature and CO2. From 1820 and 1840 was the Industrial Revolution. All that new CO2 that wasn't normally being released into the air was now being released. As the CO2 increased, the temperature went on up with it. As we start to burn more and more fossil fuels, we release more and more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. That was a pretty convincing case for global warming.
Of course, there will be those people who don't believe in global warming. Global warming is a two-sided argument, fact or hoax. Hoax people say that global warming is normal, and it is caused by the Milankovitch cycles. Well, the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, says that we are the cause of climate change and global warming. National Geographic says that industrialization, deforestation, and pollution have greatly increased the atmospheric concentrations of carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases that trap the heat inside the atmosphere. There has been talk about how the increase in temperature is normal. The mean annual temperature of the Earth is 22 degrees Celsius, and we are at 15.5 degrees Celsius. That may mean that we are far from where we were, but is still majorly harming the Earth.
According to Renew America, there is no scientific proof towards global warming. Roundtable.org says that 17,000 scientists signed a petition circulated by the Oregon Institute of Science and Medicine, saying that there is no convincing scientific evidence that human release of carbon dioxide, methane, or any other greenhouse gases is causing or will in the foreseeable future cause catastrophic heating of the Earth's atmosphere and the disruption of Earth's climate. There is proof against that, though. The Earth's atmosphere is what keeps the Earth from being freezing cold. Without greenhouse gases, we wouldn't be able to stay warm, and the ozone layer is trapping heat in. Satellites are able to measure how much energy is arriving from the sun and how much energy is being re-radiated back into the Earth. What scientists have been noticing is the decrease in amount of energy that is going back up into space, meaning that there is more energy remaining in the atmosphere. The greenhouse gases are keeping the energy in the atmosphere. The next piece of evidence is that right before the Industrial Revolution, the ice cores tell us that CO2 was approximately 280 ppm, or parts per million. In 2013, the NOAA Earth System Research Laboratory in Hawaii said that for the first time in 1,000 years, the amount of CO2 in the air had gone up to 400 ppms. This means that CO2 has increased 43% in the last 150 years. The final piece of evidence proving against this statement is that CO2 traps energy at specific wavelengths. You can measure the wavelengths using a technique called spectroscopy. As you can see on the graph, CO2 outranges all the other greenhouse gases. What this tells us is that all the energy that is remaining in the atmosphere is due to CO2, which is heating up the atmosphere, proving that CO2 is the cause for all the temperature increases in the atmosphere and the climate change. This is a picture of polar bears. You may be asking why I'm showing you a picture of polar bears. These polar bears are in close proximity of being put on the endangered species list. The climate change is melting polar ice. Without polar ice, polar bears don't have anything to stand on or to live on. If this climate change continues, more problems other than polar bear extinction could occur.
There's so much evidence that supports global warming is true. There's no way it can be natural. The melting ice sheets is only the beginning of it.
What you see now is a graph provided by the National Snow and Ice Data Center. As you can see, the thickness of the ice sheets has gone down at a very fast rate. Antarctica has lost 152 cubic kilometers of ice. The way this is going, we will have a very small amount of ice left globally. Another piece of evidence is ocean acidification. Since the Industrial Revolution, the acidity of the surface ocean waters has increased 30%. That means that there's more and more salt in the water. This is the result of more and more carbon dioxide being released by humans, and henceforth more and more of it being absorbed into the oceans. There is so much more happening around us due to CO2 and climate change.
I'm pretty sure there's more evidence to support, but usually one looks at least continental scale regions. So I don't know exactly what the temperature change in Colorado has been, but certainly over the globe, the mean temperature from about 1900 to present increased by about 1.6 degrees Fahrenheit. No, it's definitely the fossil fuel burning and emission. The carbon dioxide level has increased by 40% since the 1880s, and that goes along with the temperature rise. And certainly 97% of scientists globally accept that association. That's correct. The only natural variability that we've seen over the last 100 years with the volcanic eruptions, such as Krakatoa in 1883, Katmai, I think it was 1912, Agong in 1963, Pinatubo, and I think it was 91, and there's one other I'm missing. And each of those eruptions gives rise to a brief cooling of the order of 1 to 2 degrees for a period of a couple of years. So that's a cooling effect. Solar variability follows the sunspot cycle, 11 years, and the variability in the solar output over that cycle is about 1%, which is about 1 watt per meter squared, out of a total of about 1361 watts per meter squared. So it's a very small fraction. Otherwise, there's internal variability due to ocean atmosphere interactions, but those don't have any persistent trend. They undergo oscillations on long time scales of 50 to 60 years, but there's no trend in any of those other forcings. Well, it will depend how much the cutback in emissions is able to keep the temperature rise to 2 degrees C, that's about 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit, or if you continued at the current levels, then the rise will be 5 to 6 degrees C, about 10 degrees Fahrenheit, by the end of this century, by 2100, with disastrous consequences for heat waves, drought, higher precipitation amounts due to increased water vapor in the atmosphere, but also droughts in many other parts of the world, particularly in the subtropics. Sea level will rise in any case by at least 60 to 80 centimeters by 2100, possibly as much as a meter. That's about just over 3 feet. So much of southern Florida would be underwater. Coastal Louisiana and Alabama would also be affected. Well, we know that there are physically associated relations between CO2 and temperature that were first pointed out in the 1890s by Svante Arrhenius, a Swedish scientist. His estimates were about in line with modern thinking that a doubling of CO2 would give rise to would increase temperatures by 3 to 4 degrees Celsius. Also, methane is increasing. That's doubled, I think it is, since the pre-industrial era. Methane is about 25 more times effective than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas. And if you look at the geological record during the Ice Age, we had fluctuations in carbon dioxide between about 180 ppm in the Ice Age periods and about 280 ppm in the warm interglacials. It was last at 280 in about the early 1800s, and it's now almost 400 parts per mil, 400 ppm. So I don't think there's any doubt that greenhouse warming is real. And as I say, 97% of scientists accept that.
Scientific American says that there are more and more climate changes that scientists are not predicting that are very unexpected. The EPA says that scientists are very confident that the changes in climate are due to the increase in greenhouse gases. The increase in greenhouse gases is due to more carbon dioxide being released. All the pieces of evidence are connected, so the paper trails lead right back to us. The state says that fossil fuels emissions have never been higher in human history. Is that a coincidence? I think not. Global warming is affecting our home, and we are the ones causing it. In the end, we need to be the ones to fix it.
La la la.
Okay, now turn it off.
Speak!
Oh my goodness.
Don't back up suddenly, it'll rip.
I know you're recording.
Oh, it's not. It's not going. No, I turned it off.
Yeah, right?
No, I really turned it off.
Oh, shit.
Look at me in the eyes. I turned it off.
You did
He's
not.
a terrible liar. You are the worst liar ever.
Guys,
Stop!
He smells terrible.
It smells too bad to go any further.
I got that all on film. Oh, that smells so bad. So freaking bad.
Sun and how much energy is being re-radiated back into the earth. What scientists have been noticing is the decrease in amount of oh God! Oh my God!
I can't find a way in.
God.
Are you going?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. You
I asked if you were ready.
He usually goes like this or something, and you're just like.
That's usually me, but okay.
What did you do? What? Proving against this is that CO2 traps. I said it. I said it. Start over.
No.
I said the wrong thing.
Michael.
Piece of evidence proving against this is CO2.
Oh my
traps
God! You
energy.
said it wrong.
What? Of it that there is no way it's natural. Does that make sense?
90% of what this has been does not make sense, but it's okay.
By the National Snow and Ice. Oh dear Lord. Can we go again, please? Okay. Huh? Okay, here we go.
This is a struggle, guys.
Attention, all of our class. This is rough.
So, by the way, it's raining, and they're making me stand out here in the rain and talk about this, so you know.
Get over
so you
it.
know.
Deal with it. There you go. Ow.
Allie's gonna do it. He said scientific instead of scientists.
The scientifics.
Go again.
Yay! This is like the 4th time I've done this, and it's raining.
Only the third.
Party. Scientific.
Scientific.
I know how to say words. Scientific.
Are you
Do you
sure?
want me to do it?
No, I can do it.
Are you sure you know how to say the word scientific?
Scientific.
Oh my god.
I am so glad this was recording.